Now, covering early African societies are just in this time chunk here, which is significant, right? 16th century BCE going up basically to 16th century CE, although not um, purely that cut and dry timeline wise. This is another one of the aspects that's kind of maybe overly ambitious in a world history class to do a survey of Africa. Unlike, let's say, Persia or Greece or Rome or even India, for all of the complexities of going over India and all the many languages and aspects of various the variants that we see of what we call Hinduism and so on, really doesn't match um, the complexity and variety of the continent of Africa. And I think that a lecture like this cannot really fully do justice to the subject of Africa, but perhaps this can still help you as a student to maybe get something to pinpoint some visualization of some of the developments and the variety of African societies and some of the aspects that have affected the history and religious beliefs and so on of this continent. Okay, so having said that, we're going to move on. And we've covered Christianity and Islam, and they have a major role within the continent, along with indigenous African religions. So Muslim merchants from Arabia and North Africa, they crossed the Sahara with caravans of camels, creating commercial and cultural contacts with West Africa. And so the Arab world and the broader Muslim world is going to have a huge impact on the continent of Africa. Now, so what about Africa before Islam? And you kind of have to talk about it that way because of the influences we'll see that Islam has on Africa as a foreign religion, but then really becomes indigenous to kind of the way Christianity does to Europe. But so so what are some of the important things that I want to say? And again, I'm hitting just major topics and then just dropping them. But human life evolved in Africa, okay, according to the ideas of scientists and physical anthropologists with the concept of evolution. This was discussed in my earlier, I think in the first chapter, but it's believed that human life evolved in Africa. So for a secular historical point of view, Africa obviously is a very, very important place for all of humanity. Okay, written history did not, and so for all of the important aspects in the developments of African culture, as I've also discussed, without writing, it becomes difficult to preserve. Well, it's impossible to preserve the past. If you have people who are alive who've passed down an oral tradition that has actually survived for X or Y, Z amount of time, then we might have something. But then ultimately we have a lot of lost history, unfortunately, because of that. Other than Egypt and Nubia, most of Africa had no written records before the arrival of Islam. And so Islam and Christianity kind of functioned similar in this way. If you look at you look at other societies such as Russia, the Cyrillic alphabet is named after Saint Cyril. Christian missionaries, when they were going into a lot of countries, are going to create a literary culture. Um, in Iceland, for example, the conversion of Christianity then coincided with the writing, and people in Iceland are renowned for their sagas and their writing that came with Christianity. So Islam has the same kind of effect where writing comes with the religion. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that in Christian conquests or Islamic conquests that this created mass literacy, but literacy nonetheless. Okay, um, so I just want to point that out. Between 500 BCE and 1000 CE, Bantu tribes migrated all over Africa, and we're not going to have time to go over much details about the Bantu people. Just know that they are a significant tribe that had really dominated, I guess you'd say, ethnically the continent. Um, and then, as these migrations were ending, Islamic connections were going to be beginning. Okay, and let's see, let me just move on here. Okay, well, actually, before I move on to the next slide, just again, take a look at the map and notice the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, and here's Spain, here's the Middle East. And so, obviously, the northern portion of Africa is much more connected to a wide range of cultures that, between, the Mediterranean world, European world, and the Middle East. And then you're going to have a different set of circumstances as we go further south. Okay, so Africa is very diverse. Most people know that. If they know anything about Africa, the idea of it being diverse is usually some of the things that come to mind for people. This group up here is a Limba. They are Jewish, and they claim to be descendants of the ancient Israelite tribes. That has been a big debate, but Judaism and has been also in Africa. And as I was discussing, there's been a debate, somewhat controversial, whether or not Judaism was ever a proselytizing religion. And I think that there's a case for it that it was, in the sense that you had Berbers and other people, which we'll talk about. You do have Judaism in Africa, and that may have been actually Jews going into Africa, but I think, looking at these people, they look like Africans, and they are in fact practicing their version of Judaism. Okay, and then you simply have animists, people who have belief in spirits and gods, in a part of nature, and you have Christianity, you have a lot of different tribal gods and so on, and you can see the styles vary. And when I took a human sexual behavior class many years ago, and you also see that some of these tribes are very, very austere in their view of sexuality, some the opposite. I mean, we just see a lot of diversity of culture that we could probably talk about one tribe for an entire semester, no problem, with information out there, and yet we're talking about this whole continent. Okay, so who are the Berbers? I mentioned them. They're a significant portion, especially in the north. And I'm not going to be able to go over them again that much, but I want you to be aware of Berbers. The word Berber comes from the Greek barbar, as in barbarian. So many of the Berbers don't call themselves that as well, and they call themselves Amazigh or Imazighin, and they are ethnically, though not politically, a large portion of the populations of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Mauritania. And it's believed that they were mixed with Punic Phoenicians. Okay, so if you remember that topic being covered back in our previous chapters, I'm going to stop here and then we'll move on to the next. I will continue this lecture in the next section.